Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tanitra Williams, your host for today's show. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and start to share this broadcast to different platforms that I have access to. So give me one moment. But if you are joining us, you guys probably know what I want you to do. But in case this is your first time, I want you to hashtag live and let me know where you're watching from. You'll know you're watching live because it'll have live at the top. If you're not watching live, that's cool. Hashtag replay. But again, I still want to know where you're watching from. So you can let me know the platform if you're watching from Facebook or YouTube. But then again, let me know what cities or state or something that you are watching this broadcast from. So let's see. I'm pulling it up now so I can share it to the various platforms that I'm a part of. Okay. I'm going to share. I also ask that you would share this to your story if you don't mind. All right, I want to give people a few minutes to jump on here. Okay. So again, if you're watching, hashtag let me know where you're watching from. All right, today I'm really excited about today's topic because I think it's really powerful. And today we are talking about healing from trauma through community. Healing from trauma through community. All month, you guys know that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so a part of that is I want to begin to teach things that we can do to improve our mental health. And this month, I've really been focusing on rewiring or calming down our central nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system, all of those things to help us so that we can have the capacity to be able to do some of the cognitive work. What we don't often understand is that our brain is rewired from trauma, and we have to do some work on that part, that internal work we need to do so that we actually can calm down enough or feel safe enough to even be able to implement some of the cognitive things. And so again, I see a couple people joining on. Share this broadcast. It is going to be really important. I think it's going to be really powerful and insightful for a lot of people. So share this broadcast, share, tag, let me know where you're watching from, hashtag live, and let me know where you're watching from. So again, we're talking about healing from trauma through community. Okay. Hey, Courtney. Hey, Mama. How are you guys? Again, go ahead and tag people. I want as many people as we can get in here on this live because I think it's going to be really powerful. One of the things that you will often see when you're dealing with people with trauma or with any type of hurt, they often isolate. But God calls us to never live in isolation. He actually calls us to live in community. God uses community to help heal us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other person can reach out and help. Isn't that so powerful? And this isn't just going to be like a Bible lesson, but I do want to tie in that scriptural piece or that biblical piece. Thank you for tagging people, Courtney. Thank you so much. But again, this scripture says, hey, we are when we have people on our side. Why? Because at some point we may fall. And if we fall, we need somebody to be able to help lift us up. We're going to need somebody to be able to help us out. And then we begin to learn through science that God actually created us and designed us to live in community. And our brain actually heals through community. Isn't that powerful? Our brain actually heals through community. Healing isn't meant to happen in isolation. God created community for our protection, for our restoration, and for our growth. Okay. Healing was never meant to happen in isolation. It was meant to happen in community. Hello, Angela. Welcome. I'm going to tag a few more people here. Just tag. There we go. All right, so let's get into this. And if you guys have comments or questions in the comment section, please feel free to put that out there. So why is it that healing in isolation doesn't work? Well, the first thing is You only know what you know. And when you're isolated, you are not open to new information. I don't know how many times people think, hey, I've healed. But really, what they've done is isolate themselves from actually having to deal with other people or people um, that may not, fall in line with their ideology quite as much. And so they've assumed I've healed, but then when they actually have to get in a circumstance where they're around other people, they realize there is still a lot of stuff going on that maybe they need to address, right? And it doesn't mean that you haven't healed at all. It just means, listen, I can say I'm a really, really patient person if I'm by myself all day. Oh, yes, I'm so patient and I'm so gracious and I'm so generous. You don't know if you're a patient person until you are tested with having to deal with other people or having to wait and that kind of stuff. So sometimes what we say we're already healed and we think we don't need any help is because we're not putting ourselves in a situation where we actually have to deal with real life situations. Okay. So the first thing again is you only know what you know. Isolation increases shame and secrecy. Trauma thrives in silence, but healing thrives through connection. Go ahead and put that in the comments. Trauma thrives in silence, but healing thrives in connection. Through community, we have mirrors, and we need mirrors, people who reflect the truth back to us. Mirrors are people who reflect truth back to us. We also need people to help birth us. And when I say birth, I mean push us to be a better person, to push us to be like we were created to be. Okay. So now let's get into the science, because I said that community helps us to actually rewire our brain. Let's learn a little bit more about that. Okay. So science says that our nervous system calms down when we are in safe relationships. Have you ever been around people and just being around them, you feel anxious, but then you can go to another person or another group of people and immediately you can feel your body relax? That is what we're talking about. The science teaches us that our nervous system can actually calm down when we are in safe relationships, not just any relationship. And that is so important. Relationships are important, but there are some relationships that are healthy and they will help catapult you into destiny. There are some relationships that are unhealthy and they will take you into a place of trauma and a place of drama and hurt and pain. Okay. The polyvagal theory calls this co-regulation. So you may have a child and you can look at that child and see that they are dysregulated emotionally. As a parent, you may simply hold their hand and say, let's breathe together. What are you doing? You are helping that child to calm their nervous system. By you being calm, it actually helps them to be calm. So it's called co-regulation. God wired us to need safe relationships. Okay. Now I want to go to a little more of this science piece so we can start to see more about what I'm talking about when we're talking about the brain. Okay. So relationships actually create new neural paths in our brain. Relationships can actually create new neural paths in our brain. So every time you experience a safe connection, something like empathy, you're not judged, you share vulnerabilities, and you are received with love and affection and non-judgment, encouragement, your brain begins to form a new pathway, and it says it's actually safe and safe to build trust. It's safe for me to be vulnerable. That is important because your brain has been wired from trauma to stay alert, and we've talked about that quite a bit this month. The amygdala says, hey, we've been hurt. It is our warning system, and so it's constantly looking to see if things are safe or not. And so it's constantly going, let's see if it's safe. And so we stay on edge. We stay hyper vigilant. However, what connected safe relationships do is it creates this new path that says it's actually safe that we can trust. It's safe when I can let my guard down. Not with everyone, but there are people in the world that it is safe for me to let my guard down. If you grew up in trauma or neglect, your brain was wired for hypervigilance, as I said before, or distrust, but consistency, safe relationships can help rewire the brain over time. That is so amazing and that is so powerful. Number two is that community supports co-regulation. Healthy communities support co-regulation. So again, the nervous system is kind of what we would call social, right? Being around calm, supportive people helps your body to calm down. This is, we're all going back into the co-regulation piece. Being around safe people helps your body to calm down. I can remember um, I was pregnant and I was with my friends, and I was just really calm. And I remember leaving their house and I had to go, and I had to spend time with someone else. And I, that was probably one of the times that it stood out to me. When I went to this other person, I immediately felt my body get anxious. Why? Because my system was calm with certain people. My system did not feel safe with other people. Over time, though, repeated co regulation helps to reshape the stress response system in your brain, making your brain less reactive. Hear this, it makes your brain less reactive and more resilient. Isn't that powerful? Go ahead and give some hearts and fires just for that alone. The fact that God created our brain to begin to heal when we are in healthy spaces. So, a friend praying with you or sitting with you when you're anxious, holding your hand, or just kind of comforting you can help your brain and your body to self regulate. Now, we're going to talk about the prefrontal cortex. So, we've already said what it does is it starts to retrain that amygdala. Healthy relationships begin to retrain the amygdala that it's safe. But then what happens in the prefrontal cortex? Healthy community helps develop the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's responsible for emotional regulation, problem solving, impulse control, and decision making. Supportive feedback and healthy conflict builds maturity and emotional intelligence. What do I mean? When you are in a healthy space, you're able to um, you're able to have someone give you some feedback, and because you know it's coming from a place of love, you're able to hear that and transform some of your thinking patterns. You're able to walk through things from a more regulated standpoint, right? So when we're talking emotional regulation and you're saying I want to go, and you have, okay, let's go back. You probably all have had a situation where you were really angry and you told a friend and they got angry with you, and they hyped you up more. They didn't help calm you down. So you said, girl, he did this to me. And they said, let's ride, right? Okay. So what they did was they jumped on that bandwagon with you. But healthy relationships, and I'm not saying there's not a place for that, by the way, but healthy relationships can say, hey, let's think through this, let's do this. And then what does that do? It helps you to regulate your emotions some, so that that prefrontal cortex where we make our decisions. Hype your bestie up. Absolutely, Pastor Elwin. What happens is we are able to then begin to say, oh, you know what? I didn't think about that. I need to understand the ramifications of my action. So your community matters, because you're going to either have a community of people that will say, let's go, let's get them, or that community that says, let's think about this. I can remember a situation where I was really angry and I was ready to roll out, and then I thought about it. I said, you know what, there's going to be some major consequences if I do what I want to do. And so you need to have that prefrontal cortex working to your advantage, right? And that happens because we have those healthy relationships and we're able to walk through some things with people. Okay. The other thing, the way that healthy relationships calm our actual brain or our actual nervous system, is that love and belonging reduce the stress hormone called cortisol. What you guys know, we talk about the love drug oxytocin. When you hug someone, when you are cuddling with your child or with your spouse or whatever, there is an actual chemical that is released in your body, oxytocin. All of these things help us to calm down and feel relaxed. Well, when we feel loved and we feel like we belong, it helps us to reduce the stress hormone cortisol. Cortisol does a lot of damage to our physical bodies. And I've talked about that. What I'm talking about, you can get ulcers, you can have all types of physical health ailments that are really the result of an overproduction of cortisol, because you're out of alignment and you don't have a safe community where you can grow and feel like you belong. So if you are in a place where you don't feel like you belong or whatever, you have to say, it's up to me. I hear people often say, and this is really common in therapy, people will come in and they don't have a strong support system. And oftentimes, what they'll do is they'll say, I have to rely on these people, even though I know that these people are unhealthy for me. They'll keep relying. What I would challenge you to do is to be bold and make a bold decision to build a healthy support system. How do you do that? Now, this is not on my notes. I'm going to jump back over here, but I need you to say you have to be intentional about building a healthy relationship support system, which means, so I moved to Georgia with my daughter when she was 3 years, well, actually two, she turned three shortly after. She was 3 years old. I had people in the area that I knew, but they were all spread out over the city. I had to intentionally build a support system. By intentionally, I meant we would, go to church and connect with people and start to build relationships intentionally. Why? Because I knew that that was a part of us being able to thrive in a new area by building that support system. And you can't just say, well, I don't have anybody, or the people I have aren't healthy. You could. It's unhealthy for you to stay in a system that is unhealthy. What you need to do is say, hey, I know that every time this happens, we have drama in my family of origin. That's the family in which you were born into. But I can begin to spend time with these people and develop a relationship, a family structure that works for me, that I feel calm with, because that's going to help me be a better parent, a better spouse, a better everything, a better me, right? So building that those relationships are very, very important. Okay, I'm back on my notes now. Another positive thing that happens when we're to our brains and our bodies when we're in healthy relationships is the story sharing rewires our brain. Okay, the story sharing. Now there's two parts to this. There are some times where you share the story with people and all you're doing is regurgitating the trauma. This is not what we're talking about. But the story sharing is when you're able to share the story of what happened in a safe place where you can process that drama or that trauma, and they're able to help you to reframe the narrative behind that. Okay, so storytelling in a safe place helps shift traumatic memories from the emotional brain, the amygdala, into the thinking brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. So I belong to a community called Inner Circle. And oftentimes people will begin to talk, and what they'll say is they are on the hot seat. What that means is they're sharing, but they're open to receiving feedback. They're open to receiving feedback of, hey, I know this is how you've interpreted this, but have you thought about it in this way? Is there another way that you could think about this? And you begin to shift your thinking about that situation, right? What does that do? It begins to help to decrease some of the emotional response, but it helps you to say, maybe it wasn't my fault, because the story you told yourself as a child when your parents got divorced was, I wasn't good enough. Or the story you told yourself when you were abused as a child, that I caused this, I shouldn't have did this, or it was my fault, and all of this type of stuff. But when you're in a community or a safe space with someone, they can kind of help you go, wait a minute, you were a child. It was not your responsibility to keep your parents' marriage together. You were a child. People can love you and still they have their own issues, right? And so when you're in community, they're able to give you a different lens, a healthier lens, a healthy community, I should say. When you're in a healthy community, you're able to receive healthy feedback so that you can shift your mindset to see things a lot differently. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have places that you can be comfortable opening up, being honest, not trying to sugarcoat your life, not trying to sugarcoat your behavior, because the sugarcoating actually keeps your brain wired the old way. Why? Because it stays in that loop. It stays in the loop of whatever lie your brain believes. And so it's still trying to protect you from embarrassment. It's trying to protect you from rejection. But once you expose that, and once you begin to share with your community, your brain starts to say, oh my gosh, they didn't reject me. Oh my gosh, they heard me. They didn't judge me. Your brain starts to create, again, we talked about this earlier. It begins to create new neural paths in your brain. Now here, this is really important. We also have filters. Filters are, we see things possibly different from what's actually happening. And so you have to, community can help you expose your filters. Okay. So for example, if I say, I see Courtney here, and Courtney is actually in the community I was talking about, Inner Circle. She's my Inner Circle sister. So I may say, Courtney, I noticed this behavior about you, and it may be something that you want to pay attention to because I could see at some point this may be detrimental down the road. If Courtney has dealt with trauma in her life, she may hear that and say, I rejected her. But being in that community, we would be able to talk through that and say, Courtney, I didn't reject you. What I did was point out something to you. I still want to be in community with you. I still love you. I still want to help you. And other people could give that feedback. Now, I understand everyone may not have that specific community, but you can create healthy relationships with people where they're able to say things to you. And even if you filter it through your past rejection or past fears or anxieties, they're able to recognize, hey, what I think is happening is you're afraid I'm rejecting you, but I'm actually not rejecting you. I'm trying to correct something, and correction does not equate to rejection, not all the time. And many times, especially if it's a healthy relationship, correction actually equates to caring and not rejection. So this process of us sharing that story and getting new information and reframing our thoughts about those stories and allowing God to reveal his truth through the story, that process is helping to reorganize our brain's response to the past pain, making healing more possible. Let me know if that makes sense or if you guys have any questions about that so far. Let me know if this makes any sense. Okay. So I want to talk about what does a healing community look like? Again, we're not talking specifically about a large group of people that meet every Friday, but your community, it does matter, the community that you create. So what does a healthy community look like? Number one, it looks safe. You feel emotionally safe being vulnerable. Okay. So I have a community. I talked about inner circle. I have another community, or other communities as well, that I can say, yeah, I messed up. I did this thing and I'm not proud of it. And I know that I may get some feedback that is uncomfortable to me. I may get feedback that I don't necessarily want to hear, but I also know that it is safe for me to hear that feedback. It's safe for me to receive it and not feel like I'm being attacked. So a healthy community or a healing community is going to be one in which you can feel safe, that they're not going to attack you. But also, it's one that you know that it's going to be true, filled with truth, right? They lovingly tell you the truth, because oftentimes what we consider an attack is because it's uncomfortable. But the truth is, no growth actually happens when we're always comfortable. If you are constantly comfortable, you're probably not growing. If you are constantly comfortable, you are probably not growing. Okay, what does that mean? You may have to hear some feedback about something that is not really advantageous to your ego at that moment, but it can be advantageous to your growth. And if you can reframe that from saying, I need people to tell me how wonderful it's going, but somebody who can tell me the truth and I still know that they love me, that actually helps our brain to say, it's okay for people to give me feedback that I don't like. It doesn't mean that I'm being rejected. And again, what is that doing? It's creating another pathway in your brain which says it's safe for me to hear feedback without losing it. It's safe for me to hear feedback without isolating. It's safe for me to hear feedback without feeling rejected. I can hear less than glowing recommendations and still understand that this is still a safe place for me. Okay. The other part of what does a healthy or healing community look like? It's encouraging. They're speaking life to you. They're telling you positive things. They're not tearing you down all the time. So again, there's the truth part, but it is not tearing you down. You can be able to tell people the truth in love without tearing them down. There is also accountability. Very important. Accountability says, hey, you said you were going to stop doing that. You're still doing that. Does that mean they are rejecting you? No, that means that they are holding you accountable to what you said. And oftentimes because of the trauma, and our brain says, if someone corrects me, or if someone doesn't like something about me, they may leave me. And so anytime someone feels you're being corrected, it may feel like you're being rejected. That's where you have to stay in that community long enough to say, They didn't leave me. They still called me. They still checked on me. They're still praying with me. They're still loving me and including me in on the joke. Why? Because your brain has to begin to rewire and say, oh, just because I got that word of accountability does not mean that it's not that they don't love me or that I'm rejected. The other part about a healing community, now everybody may not include this one. I'm a believer, so I include this. It needs to be faith filled. They remind you of what God says when you forget. There are times when you are going through things and you are not, if you're not rooted and grounded in the word of God, that you will let that slip. But your faith community will speak faith-filled words to you, and they will actually remind you of some things in your life that God brought you through. They'll remind you when you say, oh, it's not going to work out. You go, girl, you've been here before. Man, you've been here before. This, God brought you out the last time. God did this. And they remind you of things in the Bible. They remind you of your own testimonies or their testimonies. That is going to help you to begin to do what? Settle your nervous system. Now, what are some common wounds that are caused by community? Because I know there are some people that are going to watch this and say, yeah, that's beautiful. But I know I've been to churches or I've been in organizations, and it's not all love. It's not all non-judgmental. It's not all of this. The truth is, we have to remember that communities, churches, organizations are filled with people who are all on different levels and different pathways trying to go to the same place. Okay. So you can go to a church and you go, okay, she said, I need to be around faith-filled people. I need to be around good, healthy people. So I'm going to go to church and this community is going to do it for me. Yes, a community can do that, but you have to recognize that everyone is not on the same pathway or the same level as you're going. So somebody else may be I'm going to say, let's use like a high school situation. Somebody else may be in the 12th grade, but you're going to have somebody else there that just starts kindergarten. That person who starts kindergarten may still be working out their own stuff. Okay. Now you're in the 3rd grade. So this kindergartner may rub you in a way and you go, oh my gosh, this is traumatic. This is why you have to be able to recognize that just because you're in a community doesn't mean that everyone in that community, or heck, anyone in that community is going to be perfect. And so you still have to be willing to say, how do I work through this in a healthy way? How can I still allow this community to be healing for me? Which means you may bring in someone who has a non-biased opinion, and you're able to say, hey, the word of God says that if we have a problem, we go to our brother, and if they don't hear us, we go to and we grab somebody else. And so once we begin to use that standard, we bring someone else in, they're able to help both of us to grow, right? And so yes, we understand that in community you may have some times where you feel rejected, or there is some of the common wounds that people hear or talk about in community is feeling rejection from families, church hurt. They have betrayal, people misunderstanding them. So again, it's important to remember that community doesn't mean perfection. Someone in your community may trigger you, or you may have a conflict. This is also an opportunity for you to begin to work on your emotional intelligence. The more you can implement the skills and see them work out in a healthy way, watch this, the calmer your nervous system happens. My husband and I get along very, very well. We don't have knockout, drag out, blowout fights or anything. That doesn't mean we don't have disagreements. And every single time we've had a disagreement where we had to have a tough conversation, we work through it. And at the end, both of us will acknowledge that that was uncomfortable, but we feel more connected after that because we were able to walk through it and navigate. Hey, I'm going to say something that doesn't feel great, or I heard something that didn't feel great. I'm going to say this in a respectful tone. I'm going to receive this because I know his heart for me is to love me and to help me. His heart is not to hurt me. So if he says something that I don't like, I have to hear it from the emotional maturity, right? And then we're able to apologize and say, ooh, wait a minute. I heard that. The truth of the matter is when you said that, it triggered something in me because it scared me, or it offended me, or it did that. That you have to be able to work through these things. And as you work through these things and you realize we have the capacity to have a disagreement and still love each other. We have the capacity or the ability slash skills to be able to have these tough conversations and still be respectful. When you see that, it begins to create the pathway in your brain that says, it's safe for me to disagree with someone and still be safe. It's safe for me to disagree with someone and still be safe. Okay. So that's really, really important. Okay. So the other thing we want to, I'm just going to give a couple examples. I'm not going to get deep into these. God heals us in community too. God heals us through community. And we've been talking about that. There are several biblical examples where you just see where God connects people, and it is through that time that God says, "Hey, I'm going to show them. I'm going to create this connection." Naomi and Ruth was an example of connection that led to restoration. So what Jesus does is he'll say, even with Peter, when he denied Jesus, Jesus went back and he was able to restore Peter. After Peter denied him, he was able to restore Peter. And that's what connection does. God uses community to help us with our healing process. So here's what I have. I have some questions for you guys. Who is someone, you don't have to put this in the comments. This is something for you to think about. Who is someone in your life that you feel safe with? Who is someone that you feel safe with? If you don't have anyone that you feel safe with, you have to say, go back to what we talked about earlier. I have to be intentional about expanding my network. I have to be intentional about expanding my community so that I can have someone that I can trust, even if that is a professional therapist or a professional. This community that I'm talking about that is amazing and powerful. Guess what? We pay. We pay. Either you pay all of your money up front or you pay once a month, but you have to pay. There is nothing wrong with saying, hey, maybe my community wasn't okay. I have, it looks like an emergency. So if you guys will just give me 1 second, I will be back. I'm just going to pause this for 1 moment. Thank you for joining me. Something's going on with my child at school, so I am going to have to end this. I will pick back up next week, but I do have to make sure that my baby's okay. So I have to go right now. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you, and make sure that you share this video, and I will be back next Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.